welcome back to another episode of Chapter 1 Book Reviews, and today we will be doing a review on The Wild Robot. This is hot chocolate, not coffee, so don't worry about that. So The Wild Robot is by Peter Brown. It's a New York Times bestseller, and this was actually a book that I always wanted to read quite a while ago, but I decided not to get it for some other books, and I just came back to check it out, see how it was. And today I'm just gonna give you a structure, the storyline of book, what I dislike, what I like about it, the key points, how this book was written, what's the style. I'll give it a rating, and that'll be the usual. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so The Wild Robot. The main character is Rosm Unit 7134, although throughout the book her name is Roz. So she arrives at a mysterious island without knowing what's her past, and she knows that there are other crates with dead robots in it who apparently fell off a cargo ship. However, we also do know that Roz is a robot with a past to a place that we find out is, at this time, the whole world is populated. Robots do the human work, but there's more on that later. So she slowly befriends the animals on the island. First, there's a baby goose who calls her mother because she basically raised the baby goose. After that, the other animals start getting more friendly towards. And to be honest, I have to say, when I just saw the introduction and saw a few pages of this, I thought that this was gonna be like, how can you even do a book on this? Like, the main storyline is very, very simple. Basically just about this robot's life on an island. Of course, the robot is artificial intelligence to a certain degree. Of course, you can still feel emotions to a certain extent, not as vividly as a human would, but still emotional. So it's not the plain artificial intelligence you see in sci-fi movies with robots blasting everything apart. It's a different robot. So she slowly befriends the animals on the islands, like I said, but soon they see a couple of robots that come back and they want to find the Rosm units, and they're called the Reco units. So the Reco units attempt to find her, but they can't because the islanders help her. So the Reco units are destroyed, and basically it's supposed to be happy, but they know that more units will come back. And I am not gonna spoil the end. There is no big battle, I can tell you that, but I'm not gonna tell you what really happened in the end. What did Roz do to face the new robots? Did she turn herself in, fight the new robots, set a trap, or things like that? I will not spoil the ending of this book because it is not surprising, but it's surprising to a certain degree. So, what I liked about this book? Well, definitely it came as a surprise that I thought this book was quite fun to read, because as I said already, the basic structure and storyline of the story was very simple, so I thought that this book may be boring. I mean, because if you think about it, a robot goes to the wilderness, how does she survive? That's not the most intricate and complicated and diverse of storylines, but I enjoyed this book, definitely. I found it very interesting with a lot of key plots. One thing, though, that I thought was flawed was because there was no character development. The character is Roz from the start, Roz till the end. She doesn't change throughout the whole book, which is definitely not something that I like about this book. But the only thing that she changes, as the title, Wild Robot, right? She's supposed to be wild now, but I don't think that there was enough emphasis on that point, because they only said in the end, Roz realized now that she was a wild robot. But there's no emphasis, there's no build on that, there's no examples that really show and push on that point, how she became wild. They just said she became wild. They're the whole experience. So that is something that I think definitely, because the whole story is about how she became wild. So they need to definitely focus more on that. Another thing that I was not a big fan of was throughout the whole book they said Roz was different. Different how? You got to explain when you say a character is different from all the other robots. so they didn't really explain that point enough, and they sort of just used it to help the story build. Like, for example, they said, but Roz was different from the other robots. She could think smarter because of this. You gotta explain, you gotta give some background, you gotta have some support from the points you make. So, and overall, this is a fun book to read. I would definitely recommend it for readers, but however, I don't think there's enough build on the strategic points that the writer put in this book. But having said that, as I said, it's a fun book for adventure readers, people who like nice stories. Although I have to give a warning, part of this story is a bit violent. It's not graphic violent, but it involves decapitation of robots. So if you have a really little kid or you're really little, don't read this book. But if you're like 9 or 10, it doesn't really matter because you already know this stuff. So, and overall, it is definitely a nice book. I think I would say I definitely enjoyed it. So I'd give it 4.2 out of 5. But as I said, a lot of the points in this book need support, and I think they need more examples. Because I think a lot of the story is built on the gooseling, which is a small goose that, the gosling, that Roz raised. And I think that there's a lot of things on that, and that's a main plot throughout the storyline. But you gotta show how Roz is different, how Roz how Roz is smarter, how she's better at survival. You gotta give examples of that and focus more on the character development and the build up for the main character, which is Roz. Because it almost feels like in this book the main event is a gosling and not Roz. So you gotta really focus down on Roz. And I honestly think Roz is too perfect of a character because from the start of the book, she was good at camouflage, she's good at hiding, she knows how to interact with people, she's nice, she's kind, she knows how to build lodges, and all of that. And in the end, she's still the exact same. But say if at the start Roz was, for example, very intricate, she was very shy, or she wasn't good at surviving, she didn't know how to interact with people. She's got to be flawed, and I think it would have been much more satisfying for me as the reader if she was more flawed and she managed to overcome that in the end. I think that would have made it much more interesting, but having said that, as I said, it's a good book, definitely recommend, and you already heard my rating for it. So again, thank you for watching today's book review, and make sure to subscribe and place a like for more book review content. And thanks for watching Chapter 1.